Hey, and welcome everyone. So recently we released a blog post entitled Building ClickHouse Cloud from Scratch in a Year, or for me, sort of fundamentally, how we built ClickHouse Cloud. And it's generated some interesting conversation. And I wanted to bring some of that conversation to you, but to do it with the people who are sort of fundamentally responsible for leading us through this journey. So Rupa, Tanya, thank you so much for joining me. If you wouldn't mind, would you introduce yourself and share your title here at ClickHouse?
Sure, I can go first. Hi, I'm Rupa Tangrala. I'm a senior engineering director here at ClickHouse. I joined ClickHouse back in October 2021. And my team is the data plane team, primarily focusing on the infrastructure, all the infrastructure needed to build ClickHouse Cloud, and interface very closely with the core team, the security team, the integrations team, and control plane team. Prior to joining ClickHouse, I was working at Netflix for 14 and a half years, leading their data platform teams, responsible for all of Netflix's online data. And it's been an amazing journey, frankly. Tanya, off to you.
Yes, my name is Tanya Bragan. I'm head of product at ClickHouse. I joined not as early as Rupa. Rupa, I believe you were the first cloud engineer, which is pretty exciting. But I joined just a few months later in January to lead our product management, both in cloud and open source. But to be completely frank, my first year was focused primarily on cloud. And as Rupa said, it was an amazing journey. And I'm happy to share what I learned. Prior to ClickHouse, I was at other data analytics startups, ExtraHop, then Elastic. So as you can tell, I enjoy smaller startup environments. I really love working with open source and building on top of open source. So happy to share aspects of that as well, because they are different from a product management perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on one side, someone who looks after engineering, and on the other, someone who looks after product. I think fundamentally the most common discussion that I saw on Twitter, primarily actually on LinkedIn, was really, how do we prioritize? How do we, ClickHouse, and it's different for everyone, how do we sort of more generally create roadmap, and what does that partnership between your organizations look like?
Perhaps I can start. I mean, so when I arrived, there was already a plan for what to build. The team on the ground has already interviewed hundreds of users of ClickHouse and understood that really what they were looking for from a commercial offering was a turnkey hosted alternative to running ClickHouse themselves. It's a really powerful technology, but how do I make it even easier for me as an operator to run it? How do I reduce time to market from using something that is turnkey? And so we already had that plan. And so we were looking really at how do we phase it out? Because as the saying goes, the work expands in the time allotted. You know, you could spend years and years building the most perfect cloud and never ship it. So how do we really get there in stages? And so what we actually decided to do was to set out on a time-based milestone type of journey. We said we want to get our cloud into the hands of our users, very engaged community, as fast as possible. So we just said, well, what can we do by end of April? Right? And what can we do by October? And what can we do by end of the year? And we started working from there. And the way we really approached it was, let's stack rank everything that users have asked for, right? And really kind of then based on our capacity, and our team was fast growing, Rupa will talk about that. We didn't actually know what capacity we were going to have based on kind of how quickly we could get people ramped. We just started moving down that list, and we sort of cut off, you know, our estimates based on what we thought we could deliver in that time. But then we had to constantly reassess. And sometimes we had to drop because some feature ended up being much more heavyweight than we thought, or there were some dependencies that we didn't anticipate. So we had to constantly reassess from an execution perspective, whether that realistic sort of plan was still realistic once we started going. Rupa, off to you.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think one of the most important critical things for us was we did not want to compromise on reliability, security, high availability. So it was very important for the engineering team to work very closely with product to figure out what is absolutely necessary for us to build in each of these milestones, and build a very solid product, right? Like it's without it's actually interesting because many times what happens is there is this tension between the new features and the features which take a lot of time to harden, right? And since ClickHouse was open source in 2016 for a long time, there's so much demand in the market that there was this we wanted to deliver fast to meet the market demand, right? And without compromising on reliability, availability. So that's where, the close collaboration with Tanya and the team came in, where we not only feature work, but also the things which are necessary for the stability of the product were prioritized.
That makes total sense. And I like that balance of boldly stepping into the unknown. What will the team size be? What will we be able to deliver, but with an end goal in mind? Like, to me, as someone who plays in DevRel all day, that's an exciting thing. I think when I read the post, and maybe I've spent way too much time in the startup space, but I really felt it was a 0 to 1 post. Like, we've gone from there isn't a thing to there is a thing and there's a future. And I think personally, at least most of the conferences I go to, we all love the tales of horror. Like, what are the things from 0 to 1 that were hardest in bringing ClickHouse Cloud to market? I'd love to hear your hardest or horror stories.
Rupa, why don't you start on this one? I have some thoughts, but I'm curious, what was the hardest for you?
Sure. As I said, right, I think I touched on it in the previous answer. For me, the hardest was meeting the time, right?
Yeah.
As I said, as I joined as a first cloud engineer, at that time, it was not just building the team, building a global team. It was good that we could hire everywhere. But we are a remote company, right? So the hardest part was building that team, being able to meet those milestones. And we also wanted to have a culture in the startup that, once you commit to a date, you have to adhere to the date. And that is hard, right? Because you don't want to compromise on quality. You want to ship a good product. But at the same time, just making sure the team, there is trust established in the team. There is that camaraderie where, you're able to develop a lot of things faster. And meet the market demand, right? Because there was already so much demand for some offering which would be around ClickHouse, because ClickHouse is very popular. And so just meeting that time was the challenge in my mind, the first year at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the thing is, we definitely like met and said, okay, like this feature, like maybe we can downscope it, but at some point you can't. Like, either you have to decide like go or no go. Like, even the MVP is so, like there's a certain bar you have to meet. So actually a good example there is backups. We wanted to have backups for a private preview in April, because again, as Rupa said, even a private preview where these are definitely non-production workloads, we still wanted to meet that bar just for ourselves in terms of reliability. But we simply couldn't get it done. I mean, backups were not well supported at the time inside the ClickHouse core database itself. We realized that was the right way to build it, is to have the database itself support backups natively, as opposed to building it on the outside. And we ultimately made the call to push it. And we talked to our private preview customers. We made it very clear that backups wouldn't be available. None of them actually had an issue with it, but like we ourselves, we're like, okay, like this is one thing we underestimated how long it would take us. It actually took us much longer. We did have backups, of course, in our public beta, but it's interesting just how much longer it's taking us to build. And some things are just hard to estimate, as it turns out, and hard to sort of plan for. And so you have to have that trust to kind of say, hey, even the MVP here it's going to take us longer. And like, what does that mean? Does it mean we push the milestone? Can we adjust sort of like what the milestone means and still, be very clear with customers what types of workloads we'll support? And that's the kind of conversation that needs to happen.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, physics are a fundamental reality. Time clicks forward despite us, and the speed of light remains a constant, as we talk about entirely too often when we talk about latency. Sort of building on that, Rupa, a question for you. And this came up particularly in Hacker News. Several of the follow-ups were really focused on team size and composition. What can you share with us about that at ClickHouse? Or I mean, is that even the right question or the right focus when you think about building a product?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is some value to team structure. I wouldn't negate it completely. But when we were trying to, and somebody who's looking at this, how fast we have been able to build, it's a very natural question to ask, right? What was the structure? How were you successful? So I think to think about it, right? Because we are a completely global company, we were able to hire across all over the world. I think one of the biggest things we wanted to do from early on was to hire the best talent, right? Because that was most important. People who have worked in large scale companies have solved this problem. We early on, even when we were trying to look at the architecture, we knew that when we are building this, we didn't want to take a shortcut, but wanted to build an architecture where we are able to separate out compute and storage, and use Kubernetes. Like year one, many people will not be thinking about this, but we wanted to do that. So for that, it was very important for us to hire the best in the industry, and hire great engineers. And I had a concept of verticals, right? Like each of the focus areas like security, reliability, observability, thinking about the proxy layer, all these different sections which are important but independent. I had one engineer lead those. It was just a flat team, right? Very flat org. Even though the title doesn't matter, like I was hiring engineers, I was not trying to hire managers and build the teams, but more of hire engineers, have a very flat structure. And each of those engineers were able to work independently and lead these efforts along with the product. So that actually really helped, and a lot of collaboration across different teams, with the product, with the sales team, with the support team. We also had, with the milestone development, it was very important for us to get that customer feedback early on. So if you think about it, like we had a goal of, in February, we will have a prototype. By May, we will have a private preview. And then October, we'll have a beta. So by the time we were doing private preview, we already had a list of customers, thanks to the sales team, who were able to give us feedback on how the product looked, what are the things we need to change. So that kind of, those things help a lot. And also lastly, I would say that, it's very important that there is this excitement about what we are building, like we are all in it together, and that pull was very, very important for us to be successful, because everybody was so passionate about this goal, was bought into that. Okay, we will be launching GA in December, and that is what we are working towards. And I think that really helped with a lot of efforts here. Yeah.
So hiring amazing people, keeping a relatively flat organization, and then sharing common objectives and milestones. Like, hey, we're going to launch a thing and we believe it is going to be awesome. I know, because I got to live through it, that there's a bunch of other considerations that go into that. There's marketing considerations that I spent a lot of time in. There's messaging considerations. There's DevRel considerations, but there's also pricing considerations. So Tanya, with this sort of like laser focus on we are bringing a solution to market, how do you think about that same 0 to 1 flow for really building out a pricing model for a product that doesn't really exist yet?
Yeah, so that was kind of an interesting journey for me. This was the first time I've had to come up with a usage-based pricing model, which is fundamentally different from pricing per seat or pricing, in my previous career, per appliance, or with really heavy consideration of COGS. Here, users are expecting really to pay as you go, and they also ideally want to pay based on dimensions that they understand. So it was quite a journey. We started off with a few hypotheses of the types of pricing models we thought, seemed intuitive. And then we spent quite some time with our private preview users, sort of like testing those hypotheses. We even sort of showed them like mock bills based on their usage, even though we weren't charging for it in private preview. It was a free kind of trial for those early customers. But we wanted to show them what would the experience be like consuming this and paying for this. And we got some feedback from them. And as it turned out, those users were more sophisticated than the rest of the market that actually we opened up our service to in beta. And so our private preview users were like, yeah, Tanya, this pricing model, and we had 4 dimensions, looks fine. Like, it's totally intuitive to us. We get it, right? And I was like, great, I nailed it. And then we go into beta, and the first feedback we get is, we don't get these dimensions. What are these units? And that's when I realized really that your there is selection bias in your early customers. They're going to be, at least in our case, they were certainly more expert in ClickHouse. To them, estimating certain types of dimensions seemed a lot more intuitive than, as it turned out, to the broader market, where we had a lot more developers new to ClickHouse, or maybe familiar with ClickHouse, but not quite as some of these early users coming and giving us feedback. So that's my advice for anybody building. That's like, listen to your early users, but also expect that when you open your offering up to the broader market, you don't know who is going to come. You're going to learn a lot in that journey. And so for me, I learned the most about pricing in that short time between beta and GA. And we made it. I'm very thankful to everybody who's giving us feedback through various channels, but we were able to sort of pivot, simplify the pricing model, and arrive at our current model today with just 2 dimensions. So definitely a journey. It was very exciting at the time. It was a little bit overwhelming getting all this feedback and just asking myself, like, okay, do I need to change the pricing model between beta and GA? But if you focus on the user, the answer is clear. Like if it's not, like if the user is confused, it's a bug. Like you have to change something. And so that was definitely part of the journey.
If the user is confused, it's a bug. I'm going to say that in perpetuity because I love it. And I love the way you just described developing an assertion, experimenting, and then as we broadened the control group in the experiment, iterating. Like not being so precious about the assertion that we couldn't move because when the user is confused, it's a bug. Maybe for both of you to wrap it up, because we are, we're an interesting company. ClickHouse is a wildly popular open source project. ClickHouse is the database you don't know that you need yet. You can query billions of rows in milliseconds. The things that people are building are incredibly exciting. We have a cloud offering, we have open source. I guess I'd love to hear from both of you. What is it that you think excites you most about the future of ClickHouse, the company, the project, the community? What is it that makes you excited about what we're up to as a company?
Yeah, I can start. Having worked in databases for more than 20 years, I'm simply impressed by what ClickHouse has to offer. I may be biased, but it's simply the best OLAP database in the market. And we're just scratching the surface, right? There are a lot of companies who don't know ClickHouse. There are companies who know and they're already using it. And speed and efficiency are very impressive. Like if you look at ClickHouse, that's where it shines. It's very fast and it's very efficient. You don't have to pay for that much storage and the same amount with other competitive offerings. And there is always room for improvement. And Alexei, our CTO, his laser focus on, he's never satisfied with the query response. It is always that it can even go faster. Why is it not faster? And with all the hardware improvements, I'm actually very excited where ClickHouse will go in terms of efficiency and speed. And just the fact that it's being used by so many companies, starting from startups as well as mature companies, big enterprises, it's a very exciting time. And to be a part of the company as well as to have the product like this. Tanya, off to you.
Yeah, I'm simply excited by the future use cases. As I mentioned, in public beta, I realized that a lot of new projects started just with cloud. And a lot of developers who would not necessarily maybe stand up ClickHouse on its own preferred kind of a turnkey platform like ClickHouse Cloud. So I'm excited about expanding, to other cloud providers, to just supporting more and more capabilities in cloud to see what kind of use cases show up. As Rupa said, what we're seeing really is a movement to introduce an analytical database like ClickHouse just into your stack as you're building applications. You have your transactional database kind of for transactional type role-oriented workloads, and then analytical workloads increasingly are part of the types of applications that developers are building out there. So we want to make ClickHouse as easy to use and consume as a developer. And that's really what I'm excited about. I'm excited by seeing even more and broader set of use cases on top of cloud as well as in open source.
That's awesome. Thank you both. A company is made up of people, and an open source project is made up of people, some of whom work for a company. As someone who spends all day long thinking about, are we taking care of our users? I know that Rupa and Tanya both use ClickHouse on the daily and both care deeply about your success. You're who watching this video, be that success of you building your first SaaS product in a year from 0 to amazing, or the success of you deploying the world's fastest analytical database for real-time analytics for the first time. We believe in you. Check out ClickHouse.com. And if you want to get started right away, ClickHouse.com/cloud. Both, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.